Hey everybody, this is Abiding Love Charities, and we are a charitable organization looking to support the birth parents, the adoptees, and adoptive families. And we're going to talk today about Lifemark, the movie. I'm going to introduce my friend and my colleague, Marilyn. Please tell me about yourself.
Yes, so my name is Marilyn Mondesir, and I am an adoptee who was adopted around 3 years old from Haiti, and I am a transracial adoptee. So my parents are Caucasian. I'm the only person of color in my family, and so basically I'm here because like everything, my experience and education, the things that I've seen, the things I've wanted to see happen in the adoption community has just pretty much led me to this point in my life. So I'm just excited to be here.
That's awesome. My name is Brittany Palladino. I'm a birth mother and also the PR director for Abiding Love Charities and Abiding Love Adoptions. And I'm excited to be here. I've been speaking and writing in the space for 10 years now, related to my placement and how I see the birth mother role in society as a whole. So I'm excited to talk about this with you too. Um, just some general things. This movie, if you haven't seen the movie, it's about a real life story. So while people in the adoption space might have wished they had done things a different way or put things a different way, the reality of it is this really is one
Right.
family story. And so
Mm,
if they didn't put some things in there that you think they should have, well, it's just because it wasn't part of the story, right?
yeah.
So be patient with that part.
Yes. Yeah.
Merlin, I'd like you to talk to me a little bit about what is your personal experience about adoption. We understand that you're a transracial adoptee, but just give us a little bit of, little history, background, some things that might have shaped why
Mhm.
why you do this kind of work.
Right. So, and I forgot to tell my title. So, I am the director of adoptee relations. So, I what really started this journey for me was back in like I think post high school. I was in college, or first year of college, and I was looking for a community a community of adoptees. And I was blessed growing up to have other adoptees and Haitian adoptees in my circle. So having adoptees around me was normal. And so I was like, hey, like let's figure it out. But then me searching and trying to find those connections, I realized I came across a community that was just really broken and hurting and felt unseen. And so that just really got the wheels turning because I've always had that passion. I've grown up, I had adoptee friends and I saw things that I thought were amazing and great. And I saw a lot of things that weren't. And so all of my life, my experiences, the good, the bad, the ugly, as well as my adoptee friends, they just they sat in me and I just had this passion. What is it, like a snowball? It just kind of gets bigger and bigger. So I started off with this Instagram page, just trying to connect with other adoptees. Just like, hey, this is a space. But then I found that adoptive parents kept messaging me and they were coming to the table and they were coming to the table with respect and curiosity. And so I was like, okay, well, maybe this can be something like a teachable moment, it can be a support group, but also to teach and show and Dr. Parents is like our narrative, right? Our story and our voices. And so that's just kind of how it's and like developed in a sense. And so I've done speaking events and I've been on panels discussing adoption. So just this has been 15 years in the making. And I'm just excited and I have years and years more to go.
That's awesome. And I think it helps paint a picture of what your perspective would be, right, on the movie and how
Yes.
that might relate to some of the work that you're doing already. As for me, I'm a birth mother. I placed almost 12 years ago. And the reason why I'm involved in this type of work is after I came home, I just really felt to do something with the story and the journey because God had impacted my life so much in the process that I really just, it was like that sort of like purpose was flowing out of me.
Yes.
And so I took to the internet, to see like where could I put my voice and where were these other
Mhm.
women like me, like where were they congregating and where were they talking and what were they saying? And unfortunately, I didn't find very many of me. And the ones that I did find, weren't have didn't have a good story and didn't have a positive outlook and really weren't interested in working with women like me who did, which really sorrowed me. Also, I went to the pro-life arenas to see where women like me were talking in those spaces and found for the most part, women like me were absent from those larger, places where pro-life issues were being discussed. That really is what got me started
Mhm.
in saying like, hey, where's my seat at the table? Where's our seat at the table? Who's speaking? We should be speaking on our own behalf, not adoptive parents. And so that's where we kind of got to where we, meaning me, is today. And so this movie came out, and I think this was really one of the only movies that I remember that, that was published, had a wide publication that involved all three pieces of the triad. So that was
Yeah.
interesting to me
Yes.
for sure, for real. But I'd love to hear your thoughts, Merlin. Like, what were your initial first thoughts when you heard about this movie coming out?
You know, when I first heard about the movie, I'm always just hesitant. Like I was really hesitant. But in full transparency, if I didn't work in with the organization I do, I don't know if I would see it just because, you know, I don't know. I was just really, really hesitant. But I am grateful that I did go see it. And I think it was very, very insightful, very interesting. And I have my own thoughts, but we'll continue. So
As for me, unfortunately, the birth mother part of all these stories traditionally with Hallmark movies and TV shows has been either I'm a flake, I'm a drug addict, or I'm wholly uninterested in having
right.
any part of a relationship with the adoptee who is the focus of the story. Or I'm a stalker who wants to steal back, her
Yeah.
child that she placed. And so none of these things are usually true about women like myself.
Mhm.
So it's when I had heard about a movie coming out, I was like, oh,
Yeah.
here we go again. And, and I was like all geared up to be like, great, like what kinds of misconceptions am I going to have to talk about now? I was a little encouraged. I was a little encouraged that Kirk Cameron was part of it.
Yeah.
But still, the reality of it is while his wife is an adoptee and he has adoptive children, and if, from my perspective, unless you are a birth parent, it's really going to be hard to do justice to the story. Obviously, the woman who is a focus of the subject of the movie, from the birth mother's perspective, she was part of the process. So I was
Mhm.
grateful for that. But so hesitant, yes, I share your thoughts and feelings on like,
Yeah.
oh, hey, what's this going to be like, right?
Yeah.
And waiting for all the adoption rocks hashtags and just being like, hey, okay,
Oh yeah.
yes.
Yeah. Like
So
hashtag adoption,
yeah,
yeah.
you know, right. So I was, would I have seen the movie? I think you bring up a great point. Would I have seen the movie if I wasn't a PR director for an adoption agency and a charity? Um, I might have gotten around to seeing it, but
Yeah.
I'm
Right.
pretty sure that I would not have gone to the movies to see it. And because I knew I was probably going to be emotional about it too, which I was. Uh,
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
so we both saw it. I
Yeah.
didn't have popcorn. I brought plenty of tissues because I knew I was going to be needing them. But I would love to hear your thoughts, Merlin. What were you pleasantly surprised about?
Very pleasantly. Just a little, I don't know. I am, and I work on it. The Lord knows I'm working on it. I'm a natural skeptic. I
Mhm.
kind of go in with a very skeptical eye in many situations. So, um, I, I think I was pleasantly surprised with. I was expecting them, like you're saying, to have the birth mother just be this villain, like just terrible person. Um, in whichever way, like drugged out or just not caring, stalker, all that. You said it very well. So I was pleasantly surprised about like, okay, I feel like me personally, I think people say it's an adoptee story. I don't see it as an adoptee story. I see it as a birth mother story and her healing in the process, and what that looked like for her. What do you think?
I thought, from my perspective, what I was pleasantly surprised by was that one, she was a real human being who had real thoughts and feelings about the adoption. I liked that there were real thoughts and feelings on all sides of the triad in this movie.
Mhm,
I liked that they dealt with adoptive parent grief. I liked that
mhm,
they dealt
mhm.
with the adoptee grief. I think that was good
Yeah,
because
yeah,
we
yeah.
need to talk about these things, right? Every side and every part of the adoption constellation has grief and loss that's associated with it. And I think just
Mhm.
as a society, if you will, as an adoptive society as a whole, we need to get people to understand that.
Yeah.
That it doesn't mean that, if I have grief and thoughts and feelings, it doesn't mean it's good or bad. It just means that that's part of the process. So I was pleasantly surprised by that.
Good. Yeah.
That was the good part. I liked that it did show all three pieces. I liked that, the part of the adoptee story where he was honest about whether or not he even wanted to meet his adoptive parents
Mhm,
was real because that's a genuine concern for adoptees in general.
mhm.
Um, one of the I like that they carried her grief. I wish they would have maybe spent a little more time on it. Um, they didn't really seem to develop much of the story around um, just her process in general. Like in the story, she had married. I think that was important too, to show that she was a functioning member of society, that she had
Yeah,
other children, that she had a husband, and this seemed to be like a functional marriage. Like, she wasn't just this
yeah.
mess for the rest of her life. And I liked that as well.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, definitely. I definitely understand. I definitely agree with you. I mean, it was a 2-hour movie and and I get it. Like there's just so much to touch, right? You take this, and you're like, how are you supposed to hit every single point and show everybody's heart and stuff? But I did find like I wanted more about the birth mother. I wanted more about the birth father.
Right.
And that unfortunately I feel like you know, I think that was a disappointment. I feel like the way that the birth father was portrayed as well, um, was a little disheartening.
Right. That's our next question is what do we
Okay.
wish that they would have focused more on?
Yeah,
Right. So you talk about it. They didn't really spend any time on the birth father. Can
yeah,
you share some more about, what your thoughts were on that?
yeah. Because I think so. I don't know, this like they have a documentary. So
Yes.
after watching the movie, I watched the documentary, right? And so, but watching the movie, I just had this feeling that he just was very apathetic, didn't care. Um, And there were like little pieces, like for instance, when they were in their house and they were talking, and he was telling his girlfriend, like, what are you doing? And then he says, we can't even feed ourselves,
Hmm.
right? And I think that was very poignant because in the documentary, it talks a little bit more about it and how like it sheds light on like, no, like they literally could not, they didn't have food for themselves. So this decision to place was more than just like, "Oh, I don't think I'm strong enough to do it," or whatever. Like, it has, like, a real economic, um, reality, like, and so I think expounding on that as well, because I think there's a lot of truth in it, that, we have our birth mothers who are expecting mothers who are at the poverty level, who are just trying to make it. And then maybe if they had more resources and support, things would be different. But I wish there's so many things I wish, but that's one of the things. Yeah.
Definitely, one thing I wish, a couple of things I wish they had focused more on, that we know were part of this very real
Mhm.
story, but didn't seem to be included. And to your point, you said earlier, like, there's only so much you can pack into a 2-hour movie, right?
Right.
If this was really to be a movie, I think that met everybody's expectations as far as information, it would
Yeah.
probably have been, it would have been part of an entire series for a year.
Yeah.
So like we said, only so much you can do. Other people have pointed people to that documentary. I lived on whatever street it was on.
Something street. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I lived on whatever street. But
Mhm.
anyway, you can probably find it. And I think if you search for the Lifemark documentary, you'll find it there. Something I wish that they had focused on, definitely developed more of the birth father story, because there seemed to be like more history between the birth mother and the birth father, like following the placement that they kind of allude to in the movie, but they don't really expound on that. So you're left kind of like scratching your head, like, well, huh, like, well, his
Yeah.
current, a girlfriend, a wife, whatever well, she seems to know about this woman, but then,
Right. They had no
how did they
context.
not know about the baby? And so there's just, there's some head scratchers there, I would say.
Mhm.
What I did, and I hear this a lot, and I've heard this a lot. I heard this after in the movie. I heard it after the movie. And I've heard it from a lot of people who are not birth parents say, oh, well, this was so healing for her to meet him. Yes, but I would like put an asterisk next to that. Like,
Mhm.
that isn't the healing.
Right.
That doesn't make everything emotionally right for her
Oh
to
no.
meet him. And I felt like in the movie, I don't know if they were like trying to make it feel that way, but there was a lot of focus on like, oh, this is really healing for her. And then
Mhm.
even when they were commenting after the movie, they were talking about the healing, and it's like, okay, well, yes, there's a healing piece of that, but that
Mhm.
isn't the thing that heals her grief and loss
Yeah. Which,
entirely. There's
yeah.
still much more to walk, and I feel like that's where everybody kind of doesn't realize,
Mhm.
even for the adoptee perspective too. Like,
Right.
yeah, he met her, but there was a whole host of emotions and thoughts and feelings and things after the fact that, and
Yeah.
we didn't ever see that in the movie, and it wasn't even spoken about. It was just like,
Yeah.
oh, and then they met and they went skydiving, like, oh, yay, okay, the end, everybody's better
Yeah.
now. And it's like, no, everybody's not better now.
No. No. It just begun. It just began. Like that just like I can't even imagine. Yeah. So I definitely understand what you're saying. I get that.
And even I have an open adoption. I have a great symbiotic relationship between, my biological daughter and especially her adoptive mom. And I love to see them, and it's wonderful for me to
Mhm.
see them and hug them and tell them I love them and all these things. But um, I still have thoughts and feelings. I still, I'm usually like, I just describe this very much so as like, after I see her, it's like emotion salad.
Yeah.
And I think
Mhm.
I wish they had talked about the need for healing and support after the
Mhm.
fact, for all of them, but
Yeah.
they never did get there, unfortunately.
Well, that's why we have charities.
That's why we have charities. If you'd like to find out more about charities, go to abidinglovecharities.org, and you can find all about our post placement support and services for adoptees, birth parents, and adopted parents. So, last question, last thoughts, takeaways. Merlin, what would you want people to know? Your last thoughts about this movie?
Okay, honestly, I would say if go and see the movie. Don't take our opinion, our thoughts as fact, but I do encourage you to watch the documentary afterwards because it has some context, and it explains things a little better. I think the movie, I think they did the best that they could with what they had, their knowledge and all that. But yes, it was lacking. To me, it lacked a lot of depth. And the adoptee, like, and I think, like you were saying, Britt, that it just started. Like, it wasn't like, oh, I'm healed. Here's a bow. We're gone, right? And so I saw like the difference. Like, the birth mother, she was very, very emotional, and you know very, wore her emotions on her sleeve, and where the adoptee was kind of stoic and happy. And I was actually really skeptical. I'm like, what in the world? Like, it just didn't seem right. But actually, in the documentary, he was very much like that. So that eased my like skepticism, and it just shows that everybody deals with trauma. They deal with everything differently. And like you were saying, I wish that we could see the next step, right? So what was the next step for the adoptee? How did he, after processing all that, how did he, you know, just what were the steps? And then the same with the birth mother, and just kind of seeing the aftermath, the after effects. But I would say go see the movie. I think it's good to have conversation like this, take it a couple steps further, and really ask the questions that need to be asked. And I think you'll be blessed by it either way if you're very open to it.
I would agree. That's probably the question everybody asks me. So would you recommend somebody go see it? Yes. I think they did a good job. Like I'll
Mhm.
give it. They did a good job.
Yeah,
Did they knock the thing out of the park? I would say no, but they
yeah.
get like a B plus as far as I'm concerned. And much more. They put much more thought into it being real than anything else that I have seen. So I would recommend it, caveat just like you said, and everybody who has seen the movie and the documentary says if you really want the full scope, you need to see them
Mhm.
both. So I would recommend that as well.
Mhm.
Just takeaways, I would say, whether you are somewhere in an adoption journey or you know someone who is, I think the biggest thing that I would want to convey is that it is a journey.
Mhm.
There was much more to their story, and there's
Yeah,
much more to our stories also than what you're going to get out of this, 20-minute video.
yeah,
So
exactly.
it's a journey. It requires support and community to make it happen. So, thanks for talking to me about this today, Merlin. We hope that this conversation blessed anybody who's watching it. And certainly, we hope if you haven't seen the movie yet and you were wondering if you should see it, maybe this will help you make that decision.
Right, exactly.
Have a great day, everybody.
Bye.